The power of silent exits, embracing Stoic strength. When you choose to walk away without saying a word, you create an enigma that they will never be able to unravel, along with a version of yourself that is lost to them forever. Imagine if I told you that your silence, that serene and wordless departure, is precisely what has the potential to bring them to their knees. It's not your justifications, your apologies, or your lengthy messages pleading to be acknowledged, heard, or understood that hold power. No, it is your quietude that truly unsettles them. This stillness is what shakes the very foundation beneath their feet. The reality is that the most impactful action you can take is not one that is loud or filled with drama. It doesn't come with grand gestures or emotional breakdowns. Instead, it manifests when you rise, brush yourself off, and leave quietly, without any forewarning, without any explanations, and without the need to glance back. That is the moment they truly feel the impact. That is when the transformation occurs. Before we delve into this insightful discussion about power, self-discipline, and self-worth, I encourage you to take a moment for yourself. Go ahead and press that like button, subscribe, and enable notifications, because this message has the potential to completely alter your perception of yourself and the world around you. Now, my friends, I invite you to visualize this scenario. Picture a lion, composed and unwavering, with its gaze fixed intently. It does not roar before it makes its move. It does not feel the need to justify its actions to its prey. It has nothing to prove. Instead, it acts with intention, in silence, and with undeniable strength. Imagine an individual who has desperately sought to mend a relationship that was already beyond repair. They expressed their deepest feelings, wrote lengthy messages, and made every effort to reconnect, only to be met with indifference, being ignored, or even ghosted. Then, one day, they simply stopped reaching out. There was no farewell, no prior indication, just an overwhelming silence. It was akin to a lion striding away into the depths of the jungle, exuding an air of confidence and invulnerability. This is the type of silence we are discussing. It is not a sign of weakness, rather, it is a powerful silence that resonates loudly. It is a silence that does not pursue but instead commands attention. And let me be honest with you, those who were left behind never anticipated this shift. We have been misled, my friends. Misled by films, by social media portrayals, and even by our own insecurities. We have been conditioned to believe that if we do not fight for understanding, if we do not plead for clarity, and if we do not lay bare our emotions, we will be perceived as cold, unfeeling, or as someone who has given up too soon. However, the truth is quite different. Choosing to walk away does not signify defeat, it signifies a decision to prioritize oneself. It reflects a refusal to remain in a situation where one's worth is unrecognized. It indicates that one has finally shifted from a mindset of proving their value to one of preserving their dignity. Embracing the power to transform pain into strength is a profound move. Marcus Aurelius, in his wisdom, once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." These weren't just words, they were a guiding principle. The moment you choose to walk away silently, you stop reacting and start leading. You're no longer chasing after solutions or justifications, you're evolving. And let's be honest, nothing unsettles others more than your peaceful absence. When they anticipated chaos, tears, or a late-night text, they expected a weak version of you clinging to past hurts. But instead, they're met with silence, space, and the unshakable realization that the you they once knew is gone. So, take a moment to reflect on this. Who do you want to be? Do you want to be the person who constantly explains, chases, and justifies, or the person who walks away like a storm that has passed through without leaving a sound, yet leaves a lasting impact? Because walking away silently isn't an ending, it's the beginning of your transformation, a reset, and a resurrection. It's about embracing change and growing stronger. So, here's what I ask of you. Choose to be the person who leads with strength and silence, not the one who is controlled by external expectations. If this message resonates with you, if you've ever found yourself in a situation where you gave everything you had, put an immense effort, and still felt abandoned, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. It's time to reclaim your strength. Speak up for those who can't, for yourself, and for the version of you that has reached the limit of explaining, pursuing, and diminishing your own value just to gain attention. And while you're at it, please like this video, subscribe, and stick around because we are just beginning this journey together. There is an entire realm of empowerment that reveals itself the moment you decide to choose silence instead of drama, tranquility over turmoil, and dignity rather than desperation. Let's explore that strength together. Keep your focus sharp, remain steady, and always remember, you are the storm. First and foremost, understand that exiting a situation can be a gateway to empowerment. Often, the most impactful statement you can make is to say nothing at all. Here's a crucial insight that isn't often shared. While it may seem easy to leave, doing so quietly is where true power resides. That's where your transformation starts. Anyone can make a dramatic exit, shout, curse, or send a final emotional message to feel as though they've expressed everything that needed to be said. However, those actions are akin to fireworks, loud, eye-catching, and quickly fading. What truly endures is the silence, the absence, the echo that remains long after you have departed. Consider this: why does silence carry such weight? Why does the act of walking away without closure instill more fear than any outburst of anger ever could? This is the essence of understanding your own power. Silence does more than just take you out of the picture. It compels others to confront their own reflections. And let's be honest, many people aren't prepared to face what stares back at them. You see, you were the mirror they'd use to avoid dealing with themselves. You were the person they could manipulate, challenge, and provoke. But the moment you step away without making a sound, they're left alone in a space filled with their own thoughts and emotions. And that's when the truth begins to shout at them. Picture this: you're in a theater. The play has ended, the lights have dimmed, and the audience has left. But the silence? It lingers. It's in that quiet moment that you realize the applause was never the point. The spotlight wasn't the goal either. The real performance was your self-control, your patience, and the way you chose to exit. Still, your mind might wander and ask, what if they forget about me? What if my silence leads them to move on? What if I lose them for good? Let me offer you a different perspective, my friend. Imagine if the sole reason they remained was because you kept pursuing them. What if your quietude is the only thing that finally reveals to them what they've lost? What if your departure becomes a burden they weren't prepared to bear? Here's a tough reality to face: most people don't appreciate someone's presence until it's no longer there. The more you try to remind them, the more they might ignore you. But the moment you leave without a word, that's when they start to pay attention, that's when the questions begin to gnaw at them. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." So, if pleading isn't the right thing to do, and explanations won't bring the truth back into focus, then why speak at all? Why not let your silence speak volumes? Why not let your departure be the final statement? I understand. Walking away can feel like surrender. That's the misconception we've been taught, that if we just tried harder, explained better, or waited longer, they would understand. But here's the truth: the more you try to justify your worth, the more they might believe you doubt it. You don't elevate yourself by convincing others. You elevate yourself by removing the need to convince them. Shifting your focus, redirecting your vigor, and letting go of the compulsion to be selected. It's not a simple task to have fear grip your thoughts. The fear that stepping back means you'll be forgotten, that it signifies you were never significant, that it means you've lost your place. But those thoughts, they're the last links severed. They're not reality. They're the specters of your past self, attempting to pull you back into a loop where your worth was tied to their notice. You've moved beyond that old version of yourself. The one who needed to be seen. The one who needed to justify. You are no longer the man standing at the door, hoping they'll let him in again. You're the man who turned around and constructed his own path. This is your moment now. Not to pursue, not to dispute, but to leave with honor. The true strength was never in being chosen. It was in understanding that you had the power to choose yourself. So, here's what I want from you right now in the comments. Write it out. I walk away with power. Say it loud. Say it with pride. It's time to let the world witness this transformation. It's time for you to see the change within yourself. No more settling for leftovers. No more delays. No more sacrificing your inner strength for fleeting comfort. You don't owe anyone a performance. What you do owe yourself is peace and tranquility. Stick with me, because we're just beginning to uncover the layers. What lies ahead? This is where things truly start to shift. This is the moment when your quiet resolve speaks volumes, far more eloquently than any excuse they might offer. Let's continue this journey together. The chaos ends here. The empowerment starts now. Moving on to the second point, why does silence feel so threatening to those who are insecure? When you choose to remain silent, it can unsettle the very people who were once comfortable with your vulnerability. Here's a truth they'll never confess aloud: your silence intimidates them. Not because you're making a mistake, but because they can no longer manipulate your emotions. By staying quiet, you take back control, and that's a powerful realization for anyone starting this path. People aren't mind readers, and they certainly can't predict your every move. For those who thrive on control and validation, uncertainty can feel like a threat. You see, individuals who rely on always being in charge or needing constant approval don't actually fear confrontation, they fear your indifference. They fear the silence you can bring. When you choose to be quiet, it forces them to confront their own inner chaos, something most people spend a lifetime avoiding. Think of it this way: imagine a magician performing on stage. Their tricks rely on your attention, on distraction, on guiding your focus where they want it. But the moment the audience falls silent, the moment there's no reaction, the magic loses its grip. That's when the magician starts to sweat. It's the same here. When you go quiet, their carefully crafted illusion begins to crack. The facade falters, the game ends, and they're left staring at their own reflection, without you there to shoulder their emotional weight. You might wonder, though, isn't silence unkind? Doesn't it make me seem distant or cold? Here's the thing: silence isn't inherently cruel, it's a boundary. It's a way to reclaim your space and remind others that their emotional equilibrium isn't your responsibility. Just as a magician needs an engaged audience to thrive, those who rely on control need your reaction to maintain their grip. By stepping back, you're not being cold, you're simply refusing to play a role in their script. And in doing so, you give yourself the freedom to stand firmly in your own truth. Have you ever worried that others might think you don't care? That's exactly the narrative people try to push onto you. They'll twist your silence into a sign of cruelty or guilt, but that's far from the truth. The reason they label your quietness as cold is because they've lost the ability to control or manipulate the situation. Similarly, they call you selfish when you stop giving endlessly from your own emotional well to fill theirs. As Seneca once wisely said, sometimes even to live is an act of courage. In a world that thrives on loudness, where everyone scrambles to be the last to speak and drama is treated like currency, true bravery lies in silence, especially when that silence comes from a place of clear thinking and emotional self-control, not from shutting down entirely. Let me clarify this: your silence doesn't mean you're numb or apathetic. It means you've chosen not to react impulsively. It shows you've developed a mental filter that separates your raw emotions from your actions. This kind of restraint is a hallmark of Stoic strength, a power most people never truly experience. And here's the thing: silence scares them because it creates space. That empty space forces questions: why isn't this person chasing me? Why aren't they trying harder to provoke a reaction? Silence isn't weakness, it's a deliberate choice to rise above the noise and take control of your own emotional landscape. Why did they suddenly stop explaining? Why does it feel like I've lost my sense of control? It's in that silence that their own feelings of guilt begin to surface, along with their doubts and regrets. But it's important to understand that these are not your responsibilities to bear. Those are their emotions to work through on their own. Meanwhile, your silence isn't about playing mind games or trying to win them back. Instead, it's about reclaiming yourself, restoring your energy, resetting your thoughts, and recovering the pieces of yourself that were worn down by constantly explaining, giving too much, and trying too hard. Yes, initially it can be tough, because a part of you still yearns to be understood and recognized. That's completely natural, it's part of being human. However, silence has a powerful lesson. Just because they don't understand you doesn't mean you are misunderstood. It simply means they were not truly listening from the beginning. So, here's what I want you to always keep in mind. When they react with confusion at your quietness, label it as childish, or accuse you of lacking heart, don't let their words pull you back in. Those responses don't reflect the truth. They reveal their discomfort trying to trap you again in the exhausting cycle of emotional turmoil. But this time, you won't fall for it. This time, you are consciously choosing peace over performance, calm over constant effort. This time, you're not playing by their rules. You're stepping away gracefully, without the need for background music, thunderous applause, or the validation of an audience. So, right now, do something for yourself. Leave a comment below and make a declaration. My silence is my strength. Say it for every instance when your voice was overshadowed, every message you sent and later regretted, and every time you felt compelled to explain yourself to someone who didn't truly value your input. Say it proudly in the comments. Show them. Show yourself. Show the entire world. And stick around because we're about to dive even deeper into the power of walking away without saying a word. It's in those moments that they begin to question everything. When you stop providing answers, they're left scrambling to find them. That's when the shift in dynamics becomes undeniable. Stay with me, we're just getting started. Point number 3, the art of walking away and refusing to let rejection define you. Remember, it's not rejection that breaks you. It's the false belief that you had to be someone you're not to be loved. Hey everyone, let's get one thing clear. Stepping back isn't a sign of weakness. In a world that constantly pushes you to prove your value through constant effort, choosing to walk away is actually a powerful act of defiance. They'll probably tell you that if someone leaves you, it means you're not good enough, that there's something missing in your life. But here's the truth, rejection doesn't determine your worth. It reveals their inability to see the real you. When you choose to leave, especially in quiet silence, you're doing more than just distancing yourself from a situation. You're rejecting the idea that their opinions should define who you are. You're standing up not just for yourself, but for the belief that love doesn't have to be earned through pain or sacrifice. Think of it like this. Imagine a sculptor working with a block of marble. To everyone watching, it looks like they're creating a statue of someone else, a person they expect to be ordinary, predictable. But with every strike of the chisel, every crack that forms, something unexpected emerges. A shape that's bold, strong, and entirely original. That's you. When you walk away, they thought they were breaking you, but all they did was expose the version of you they couldn't handle. Rejection feels so personal because we tie it to our identity. We ask ourselves, why wasn't I enough? What did I do wrong? How could they leave so easily? But here's the twist, it wasn't about you at all. It was about their limits. And that's okay. Your worth isn't tied to what others can't see. It's about who you are, regardless of what they're too afraid to accept. This reflection is rooted in a profound recognition of personal boundaries, emotional injuries, and the hopes we sometimes place on others. If someone was unable to pick you, to choose you as their partner, friend, or confidant, this doesn't mean you're damaged or unworthy. Instead, it often means you've reached a point where you refuse to make yourself smaller, less authentic, or less visible just for the sake of being recognized or accepted by someone else. The ancient philosopher Epictetus once advised that external events are less critical than our internal responses to them. He suggested that one of the strongest, most dignified reactions is simply to step away, without unnecessary persuasion, pursuit, or explanation. To choose silence and uphold your self-esteem, and as a result, to declare with quiet determination, you don't have permission to define who I am. Admittedly, letting go is painful. There's a lingering thought that, with just a bit more effort, a different word, or a little extra patience, things might have worked out. You might wonder if somehow, if you'd just changed enough, the person you cared about would have decided to stay. But here's the essential truth. Anyone who walks away because you're being true to yourself was never truly committed to you for the right reasons in the first place. The people who genuinely appreciate you for your real self don't require pleading, extra effort, or transformation to remain by your side. Often, we're taught to believe that love must be earned through persistence, or even suffering, as if affection were a prize you win by staying the longest, fighting the hardest, or enduring the most. But this mindset isn't about love at all, it's more about dependency, sometimes confused with loyalty. Imagine running after a mirage in the desert. Every time you think you're close, it moves farther away. That's what it feels like to chase love by compromising who you are. Choosing to walk away doesn't mean you're giving up on love itself. Rather, you're letting go of the mistaken belief that love means you must sacrifice your identity or self-worth. That realization, that you deserve relationships where you can be fully yourself, is where your real strength lies. The essence lies not in the act of leaving itself, but rather in the choice to depart without feeling the need to justify your actions. Consider this for a moment. When they chose to reject you, they believed they held the upper hand. They assumed you would become distressed, lose sleep over it, or perhaps reach out to them again. However, in a surprising turn of events, you chose silence. You turned your focus inward, refraining from explanations and no longer relying on their presence to validate your worth. This transformation, this subtle yet profound change, is one of the most empowering actions you could ever take. So, what unfolds next? They begin to question their own decisions. They wonder why you didn't fight for them, why you didn't attempt to reconnect, and why you seem so composed. Gradually, a realization dawns on them. Perhaps they didn't truly break you. Maybe you've come to understand that your peace of mind is far more valuable than their approval. Now, I encourage you to reflect on this and confront it honestly. Do you wish to be remembered as someone who pleaded to remain, or as the individual who walked away quietly, leaving a lasting impression? I assure you, while they may forget the specific words you spoke, they will never forget the manner in which you chose to leave. That quiet departure, that peaceful exit, it transforms into a mirror that they'll have to gaze into whenever they attempt to convince themselves that letting you go was the right decision. So declare it now, my friends. Leave it in the comments. I determine my own value. Announce it so loudly that your past can hear it, and with such conviction that your future arrives ahead of schedule. Say it for every instance where you believed rejection meant you were inadequate, when in reality, you had simply outgrown your surroundings. And stick with me, because what follows next is the part where your silence begins to haunt them. Where your lack of words speaks volumes. When you leave without uttering a sound, they start to hear their own deceptions. The truth has a voice, but silence compels people to confront the one thing they've been evading, themselves. My friends, let's cut through the noise. When you walk away without a single word, without that final message, without the emotional outburst they anticipated, you present them with something far more potent than an argument. You hand them a mirror. And in that mirror, they no longer see you. Instead, they see themselves raw, unfiltered, and unmasked. And for many, that's a frightening prospect because, let's face it, they expected you to crumble. Have you ever noticed how some individuals crave that final, desperate message from you? Their desire for one last explanation, one last plea, or one last emotional outpouring from your end stems from a profound psychological dynamic. As long as you're filling the air with words, they're absolved from confronting the haunting voice within, a voice that whispers unsettling truths. You overstepped. You lost something precious. Your actions had consequences. Imagine standing in a vast, empty chamber where every word you've ever uttered bounces off the walls, creating an overwhelming echo of explanations and attempts to mend what was repeatedly broken. Now, envision walking out of this room, the door creaking shut behind you, leaving only the eerie silence. In this quiet, the only sounds are the echoes of their own guilt-ridden thoughts and the unflinching reflection staring back, devoid of distractions. This, in essence, is the profound power of silence. Interestingly, most people's fear isn't about being alone, it's about the unvarnished truth that catches up with them in the stillness. The moment you cease to fill the silence, the carefully constructed lies they've been telling themselves begin to crumble. Familiar self-justifications like "I did nothing wrong, they were the problem," or "I can easily replace them" start to lose their convincing narrative. The internal monologue, once a seamless playback, now skips and glitches because there's no one left to blame, manipulate, or burden with their emotional weight. Perhaps, a part of you still yearns to speak up, feeling an urge to drive the point home one last time, to make them understand. However, it's crucial to recognize the liberating impact of your silence. It's not about them getting it, it's about you breaking free from the cycle of emotional labor and the need for validation from those who have consistently demonstrated they're not willing to listen. Imagine walking away from a situation where someone has wronged you, and they're left feeling smug and self-righteous. They might even sleep soundly, free from any guilt or remorse. But here's the truth. Anyone who can live with themselves after mistreating someone else was never worthy of your time or energy in the first place. You don't owe anyone an explanation who only listened to respond with their own agenda. You don't owe closure to those who intentionally created confusion or chaos. As Marcus Aurelius so wisely put it, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. And in this case, your enemy isn't the person who wronged you, it's the old version of yourself that felt the need to over-explain, overshare, and overgive in the hopes of finally being enough. But not this time. This time, you're walking away with a newfound sense of self-awareness and self-respect. You're not feeding the illusion that you need to justify or explain yourself to anyone. Instead, you're letting it starve. And here's the interesting part, they will notice. It might not be immediate, but silence can be a powerful tool. It doesn't hit like a punch, but it can be just as effective. By choosing not to engage or react, you're taking away their power to control the narrative. You're taking back control of your own life and your own emotions. So, remember that you don't owe anyone anything. You don't owe them an explanation, and you don't owe them your time or energy. You owe it to yourself to walk away with dignity and self-free. The impact is gradual, yet relentless, like a persistent leak that never ceases. It emerges unexpectedly, often in the stillness of the night when the phone remains silent and the pursuit has ceased. In these moments, they will begin to experience the emotions you've been carrying all along. Here's the remarkable part, your silence will communicate more powerfully than any words could. It will declare, "I no longer need to justify myself to you." It will assert, "Your turmoil no longer resides in my tranquility." It will convey, "You're not worthy of my response." Allow them to converse with their friends, fabricate tales, and feign victimhood. Deep down, where truth resides, they'll know the reality. And you'll be preoccupied with your own growth to be concerned. So, speak now, but not to them. Address yourself, the individual you're evolving into. Affirm it in the comments below, "My silence speaks truth." Utter it not as retribution, but as a proclamation that you will no longer surrender your power without compensation. It's time to stop trying to justify yourself to those who are determined to misinterpret your intentions. You've already put in more than enough effort. Now, allow the quietness to take over and do its work. Stay with me for a moment, because what follows is crucial. This silence is not merely a reflection of the truth, it serves as a foundation for your reconstruction, piece by piece, brick by brick. This, my friends, marks the beginning of your resurgence. Let's take a moment to reflect on a profound insight. Detachment can often be more painful than the chaos of drama. People are not intimidated by your anger, rather, they are unsettled by your indifference. When you reach a point where you no longer care, you become invulnerable. It's essential to understand this distinction, my friends. Many individuals can cope with your fury. They can manage your tears, your emotional outpourings, and even the heartfelt messages you send in the wee hours of the night. Why is that? Because those expressions still signify that they hold some significance in your life. They still possess a degree of influence over you. Your emotional turmoil keeps them at the forefront of your narrative, but when you detach yourself, when you maintain your composure, that's when you truly unsettle them. In that moment, they realize they are no longer the protagonists in your story. Detachment is often misinterpreted as weakness, but in reality, it is one of the most powerful forms of strength. It's a state of being that allows you to reclaim your narrative and take control of your life. When you detach, you are not simply withdrawing, you are choosing to prioritize your own well-being over the expectations and demands of others. This shift can be incredibly liberating. It allows you to step back and assess your situation without the emotional clutter that often clouds your judgment. Imagine a scenario where you've been in a tumultuous relationship, filled with ups and downs. You've expressed your feelings, shared your frustrations, and even cried over late-night conversations. Yet, despite all your efforts, the other person remains unchanged, perhaps even indifferent to your pain. In such cases, it's easy to feel trapped in a cycle of emotional drama. However, when you decide to detach, you begin to see things from a different perspective. You realize that your happiness does not depend on someone else's actions or reactions. This realization is empowering. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring, rather, it signifies that you are choosing to care for yourself first. It's about recognizing your own worth and understanding that you deserve peace and happiness. When you embrace this mindset, you become less affected by the opinions and behaviors of others. You stop giving them the power to dictate your emotions. Instead, you cultivate a sense of inner strength that allows you to navigate life's challenges with grace and resilience. Let's delve deeper into why this detachment can be so unsettling for others. When you are emotionally invested in someone, your reactions, whether they are anger, sadness, or frustration, keep the dynamic alive. Those emotions create a connection, albeit a tumultuous one. However, when you choose to step back and detach, you disrupt that connection. You shift the focus away from them and back onto yourself. This shift can be jarring for those who thrive on the emotional exchanges that drama brings. They may feel a loss of control or significance in your life, which can lead to their own feelings of insecurity. In essence, your detachment serves as a mirror, reflecting their own vulnerabilities. It forces them to confront the reality that they are no longer the center of your universe. This realization can be profoundly unsettling, as it challenges their sense of identity and importance in your life. So, as you embark on this journey of self-reconstruction, remember that your silence and detachment are not signs of weakness but rather powerful tools for reclaiming your narrative. Embrace this process, and allow it to guide you toward a stronger, more resilient version of yourself. Your comeback is not just about returning to a previous state, it's about evolving into someone who understands their worth and is unafraid to prioritize their own happiness. When people hear the word detachment, they often jump to the conclusion that you must be cold-blooded, unfeeling, or even broken. In reality, that judgment says more about them than it does about you. It tends to surface only after they discover they can no longer tug on your emotional strings. Genuine detachment is not the absence of emotion. It is, instead, full ownership of your inner landscape, so complete that no outside party can meddle with it. Picture two very different bodies of water. First, imagine an angry ocean, waves hammering the shore, wind howling, foam spraying everywhere. That scene represents emotional turbulence, the drama people expect you to display after a breakup, a betrayal, or one of their subtle power plays. Now replace that image with a deep, pristine mountain lake. The surface is glass smooth, perfectly reflective, and seemingly undisturbed by whatever weather hovers above it. That calm lake is what healthy detachment feels like. You're still water through and through, you simply refuse to be whipped into a frenzy on command. Here's what tends to happen next. The moment manipulators sense you've reached that lake-like state, they start running little experiments. They scatter breadcrumb texts, post mysterious social media updates, or casually mention how well they're doing without you, all just to measure your reaction. Think of these gestures as fishing lines cast into the water to see if any ripples appear. When none materialize, they become uneasy. Why the sudden anxiety on their part? Because the tactics that once granted them control no longer work. Detachment means you're not auditioning for their approval, not rewriting your schedule for their surprise visits, and not surrendering your peace to decode their cryptic messages. You're simply finished with the game. That is the power of true detachment. By stepping out of the emotional tug-of-war, you end the match altogether. Even if the other person continues to pull on the rope, they soon realize they're just yanking at empty air, and that realization can be downright terrifying for them. Detachment communicates everything that may be difficult to accept. It conveys the message, I no longer rely on you to feel complete. It expresses, you are no longer the focal point of my life. This realization reflects the lessons learned from our past experiences, yet it does not define my identity. Seneca once noted that we often endure more suffering in our minds than in actual life, and this observation holds particularly true in the context of relationships. We tend to believe that letting go equates to losing something valuable. We fear that by ceasing to demonstrate our care, we appear unfeeling. However, the reality is that clinging to someone who does not reciprocate your feelings is what truly causes emotional pain. It is through detachment that we find our salvation. This process is undoubtedly challenging. There will be times when the quiet feels like abandonment, when their absence creates a deep sense of longing, and when your thoughts might suggest, perhaps if I just reached out one more time, they would understand my feelings. But that is the voice of addiction speaking. It's the part of you that still seeks closure from someone who was never able to provide clarity. You do not require more messages or their attention. What you truly need is to reclaim your inner peace. The instant you begin to detach is the moment your journey toward healing commences. This shift occurs not because you have stopped caring, but because you have started to prioritize your own well-being over their reactions. That transformation is precisely what they were unprepared to face. When someone hurts you, people often anticipate a big reaction, shouting matches, dramatic confrontations, or intense arguments. These reactions feed their ego and give them a sense of control over the situation. However, when you choose to respond with silence and focus on your own life instead, it leaves them grappling with the emptiness. Silence has a way of amplifying reality, making them question their significance and your indifference. They might start wondering, did I really mean so little to them, or why aren't they trying to reach out? But by the time they realize the impact of your detachment, it won't affect you anymore. You'll have moved on, focusing on personal growth, healing, and self-improvement. Think about it, what stings more? A loud argument that leaves everyone more confused, or watching someone become completely unaffected by your absence? The answer is clear. So, here's what I want you to do right now. Leave a comment below saying, I detach to protect. Say it with conviction, as if you're finally taking back control of your emotional well-being from those who never deserved it. Say it for all the times you kept investing in someone who never valued your presence. This is where everything changes, so stay with me. What lies ahead is the moment we cease to react to our suffering and begin to rise above it. It's a time when silence becomes your tactical approach, and your resurgence is no longer reliant on the validation of others. Let's continue this journey together. The most exciting phase of your personal growth is still to come. Let's discuss point number 5, the idea that detachment can be more painful than drama. People are not truly afraid of your anger, rather, they fear your indifference. When you stop investing your emotions in others, you become invulnerable. Let's clarify something important, my friends. Most individuals can manage your fury. They can cope with your tears, your emotional outbursts, and even the heartfelt messages you send in the middle of the night. Why is that? Because those reactions still signify that they hold significance in your life. It indicates that they possess some level of control over you. Your emotional turmoil keeps them at the forefront of your narrative. However, when you detach yourself and maintain your composure, that's when you truly unsettle them. At that point, they are no longer the protagonists in your story. Detachment is often the most misinterpreted form of strength. Many believe it signifies that you are cold, unfeeling, or perhaps even damaged. But that's merely the narrative they create when they can no longer sway your emotions to their advantage. True detachment is not about suppressing your emotions, it's about embracing them fully, ensuring no one else has control over them. Imagine a wild storm at sea, with waves crashing and winds howling. That's the emotional turmoil they want to see from you after their departure, betrayal, or manipulative games. However, envision a serene, still lake, reflecting the sky, undisturbed. That's detachment. That's the state that makes a difference. That's the state they can't manipulate. When you detach, you're no longer responding to their actions. You've reached a point of emotional independence. And that's terrifying to them. Have you noticed how they try to provoke a reaction from you after creating distance? They leave subtle hints, post ambiguous stories, and pretend to move on, only to return and check if you're still emotionally entangled. But when you cease reacting entirely, when they realize their tactics are ineffective, that's when their panic sets in. Why? Because detachment speaks volumes, revealing truths they didn't want to confront. The message conveys, I no longer rely on you to feel complete. It expresses, you are no longer the focal point of my life. It also states, what we experienced together has taught me valuable lessons, but it does not define me. Seneca once remarked, we endure more suffering in our minds than in actual life. This observation is particularly relevant in the context of relationships. We often believe that letting go signifies a loss, and that if we cease to demonstrate our care, we appear unfeeling. However, the reality is that clinging to someone who does not reciprocate your feelings is what truly causes pain. In fact, it is detachment that ultimately leads to healing. This process is undoubtedly challenging. You may find yourself in moments where the quiet feels like abandonment, where their absence creates a deep ache, and where your thoughts whisper, perhaps if I just reached out one more time, they would understand. But that is the addiction speaking, the part of you that still longs for closure from someone who was never able to provide you with clarity. You do not need more messages or their attention, what you truly need is to reclaim your peace. The instant you begin to detach is the moment your journey toward healing starts. This shift occurs not because you have stopped caring, but because you have begun to prioritize your own well-being over their reactions. That transformation is something they were not ready for. People often anticipate a reaction or noise when they hurt you. Some individuals thrive on chaos, conflict, and intense emotional displays because these dynamics make them feel significant or in charge of situations. However, when you choose to disengage, when you withdraw from the drama and redirect your energy toward your own growth and well-being, you leave them in a void. Silence, dear friends, is a powerful force. It's in that quiet space that reality becomes undeniable. They'll begin to question their own importance. Did I truly mean nothing to them? Have they genuinely moved on? Why isn't anyone reaching out to me? But by the time these thoughts take root, you'll already be too far removed from their emotional games to care. You'll be focused on rebuilding yourself, healing from past wounds, and growing into a stronger version of who you are. Let's be real, what causes more pain? A heated argument that leaves everyone more confused, or watching someone become utterly indifferent to your presence? Exactly. So here's my challenge to you right now, share this in the comments. Write, I detach to protect. Say it with conviction. Declare it as a promise to no longer give emotional access to people who've never shown they deserve it. Say it for every moment you showed up for someone who consistently walked away. This cycle ends today. Stick with me as we delve into the fascinating journey of personal growth and the power of silence. The moment we shift from reacting to pain to rising above it is a pivotal one. Silence, in this context, becomes a strategic tool, and your comeback becomes an independent act, no longer reliant on external validation. Let's explore further. The most transformative part of your personal evolution is yet to unfold. When it comes to number 7, it's important to understand that the feeling of absence they experience isn't closure, it's the natural outcome of their actions. Closure is a privilege they forfeited the moment they prioritized confusion over clarity, games over personal growth, and ego over effort. Let's clarify this, my friends. When you gracefully exit their life, without the customary explanations, final messages, or emotional goodbyes they might have anticipated, they'll likely label you as cruel, cold, or immature. They might even suggest that you ran away. However, what they're truly experiencing isn't your absence, it's the tangible consequence of their own choices finally manifesting. Here's the reality: individuals who thrive on power dynamics, half-truths, and emotional manipulation don't seek closure when they initiate a departure. Instead, they seek control when you do. Closure isn't their ultimate goal, they crave certainty. They want to be certain that you're still emotionally affected by their absence, that they still hold significance in your life, and that they can enter and exit your life at will, with you always waiting at the emotional threshold, heart in hand. But when you choose to close that emotional door, quietly and on your own terms, that's when the true consequences begin to unfold. Consider this scenario: they presumed you would require the resolution, the dialogue, the rationale, the aftermath. However, you chose to leave them in a state of quiet contemplation. By withholding the response they anticipated to justify their actions, you've left them with only the reverberations of their own choices. There are no justifications, no solace, no farewell speech, merely a profound tranquility and an emerging awareness of remorse when they acknowledge that they've played the hand too long, and now the adversary has vanished. Visualize it in this manner. Envision someone hurling a stone into a tranquil lake, anticipating ripples, but there's an unexpected calm. No disturbance, no turmoil, just serene water. This is what your absence signifies. It's the unforeseen development they weren't prepared for. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't beg. You simply ceased to engage. Now, their thoughts begin to spiral. Could I have been mistaken? Did I overstep my boundaries? Did they genuinely care all along? This isn't the closure they expected. It's the psychological repercussion. It's the type of silence that resonates much louder than any confrontation ever could. For beginners, think about it as a lesson in the power of non-reaction. It teaches us that sometimes, the most potent form of communication is not through words, but through the absence of them. The ancient wisdom of Marcus Aurelius reminds us that the most powerful form of revenge is not to stoop to the level of our adversaries, but rather to rise above the chaos and walk away with dignity. By doing so, we refuse to engage in their toxic games and instead, choose to exit the situation with poise and elegance. This approach may seem counterintuitive, especially when our natural instinct is to defend ourselves and set the record straight. However, it's essential to recognize that individuals who have wronged us in the past are unlikely to understand our perspective or acknowledge the harm they've caused. They would likely distort our words, dismiss our feelings, and justify their actions, leaving us feeling frustrated and unheard. The truth is, we don't walk away to punish them, but to protect ourselves from further harm. The silence that follows is not an act of revenge, but a necessary step towards healing and recovery. As time passes, the absence of our presence in their lives becomes increasingly palpable. The void we leave behind is not easily filled, because they underestimated our value and believed we were disposable. But what they fail to realize is that people don't forget the peace and tranquility that genuine relationships bring. They don't forget the real connections they've made, and the memories they've shared with others. Every day that we don't engage with those who have wronged us is a reminder of the significance of our presence in their lives. It's a testament to the fact that our absence is not a sign of weakness, but a symbol of our strength and resilience. By choosing to walk away, we're not only preserving our own well-being, but also sending a powerful message that we will no longer tolerate toxic behavior or engage in drama. So, the next time you're tempted to respond to someone who has wronged you, remember that your silence is not a sign of defeat, but a sign of victory. It's a declaration that you will no longer be drawn into their games, and that you will rise above the noise to find peace and serenity. Individuals often remember those who chose to leave without glancing back. Allow them to confront the discomfort that arises from your absence. Let them experience the heaviness that comes with your decision to step away. This isn't an act of cruelty, rather, it is a natural consequence of failing to honor something that was genuine and meaningful. You are not obligated to grant them another opportunity to twist the narrative in their favor. Instead, you owe it to yourself to embrace a new beginning. So, I encourage you to take a moment right now and express this in the comments below. My absence is their consequence. Say it with the conviction of someone who has moved past the need for validation or understanding. Say it with the serenity of a warrior who recognizes that true peace comes from the act of letting go. Declare it because you have come to understand that their turmoil was never your responsibility to mend. Stay with me, because what follows is crucial. This is the moment when you stop measuring your self-worth based on their reactions and begin to create a life that makes them realize they never truly had access to the authentic you. Your return may be quiet, but it is unfolding gradually, step by step, day by day. Continue to move forward, continue to rise. Remember, while you may have walked away from them, you have simultaneously walked toward your true self. Sometimes, the act of walking away is not merely about leaving someone behind, it is about embracing who you are meant to be. This journey is all about finally reconnecting with the person you were always destined to be. Let's clarify something important, my friends. When you made the decision to step away, it wasn't about trying to prove a point to anyone else. It wasn't a grand gesture of power, nor was it an act of vengeance. Instead, it was a significant moment of realization, a clear boundary established, not between you and them, but between the person you once were and the individual you refuse to become again. They will never truly grasp the sacrifices you made to leave without any sense of closure. They won't understand the struggle of remaining silent when your heart was crying out for answers, or the pain of turning away from something you had invested so much of yourself into. They simply cannot comprehend it because they weren't the ones lying awake at night, questioning why love felt like a plea for validation. They didn't experience the frustration of feeling that respect was only given conditionally, or that your self-worth was up for negotiation. But you finally recognized the truth. You understood how remaining in that situation was gradually diminishing your essence. You realized that having to repeatedly justify your existence was stifling your spirit, and that the effort to be acknowledged was draining a part of you that deserved tranquility, not a constant performance. So, you chose to walk away. And in that moment, even though it was painful and even if it turned your world upside down, you weren't just leaving something behind. You were moving toward something greater, toward clarity, toward liberation, and toward the version of yourself that refuses to accept anything less than what you truly deserve, rather than settling for mere scraps of emotional validation. Think of it in this way. Picture a bird that has spent its entire life behind the bars of a cage. The door has always been slightly ajar, offering a chance at freedom, yet the bird never took it, paralyzed by anxiety. Fear of what lies beyond the familiar. Fear of falling and failing. Fear of discovering it might not know how to soar. But then comes a day when the bird, not suddenly fearless but simply weary of being limited, decides to cross that threshold. In this story, you are the bird. You didn't walk away from your situation because you had every answer or felt sure of yourself. You stepped out because you could no longer endure the confines of a life weighed down by someone who couldn't support you. It wasn't about certainty, it was about necessity, a longing to see who you could become without that burden. Others may not say a word, but they'll notice the difference. There's a subtle transformation, a calmer presence that no longer revolves around them. There's a new sense of confidence, a gentle radiance that says, I don't need anyone else to make me whole. I just needed the freedom to rediscover myself. The philosopher Epictetus once advised, first decide who you want to be, and then take the actions that lead you there. That's exactly what you did. You moved forward, not to gain approval or be recognized by others, but because your heart yearned for authenticity, for meaning, for what truly matters to you. Let's be honest, this journey won't always feel grand or victorious. Sometimes, it will be quiet and uncertain, more about persistence than heroism. But it's in taking those steps, no matter how unremarkable they may seem, that you begin to reclaim the life that's waiting for you outside the cage. There will be quiet moments that feel heavier than any noise ever did. There will be days when the stillness feels more profound than the chaos of being around others. But here's the good news, this kind of silence isn't empty. It's a space where truth settles, where healing begins, and where you finally belong. You're no longer performing for others' expectations. You're crafting a life that reflects your own values and dreams. And here's the magic of it all, the more time you spend away from the noise, the clearer it becomes that you were never meant to settle for less than your full potential. The more you prioritize your inner peace, the less you'll wonder if others miss you. Because the reality is, you're not seeking to be remembered. You're striving to leave a mark, someone who matters, regardless of whether they're part of your story or not. They may return, they may not. But either way, you've grown into someone new. You're not the person who waits anxiously at the door, hoping for a welcome home. You're not that version of yourself anymore. You're becoming someone who attracts love not through desperation, but through calm confidence, a clear purpose, and the quiet strength of being present. So, my friends, here's the truth, you're not just surviving. You're evolving. Leaving that situation behind wasn't the conclusion, it marked the start of your ascent. The quiet, the separation, the disconnection, all of these elements guided you back to your strength. If this message resonates with you, give the video a thumbs up, pass it along to someone who could benefit, and hit subscribe for additional content. Keep your wits about you.